As luck would have it, Joe, we were discussing the last segment some of the laws and why some of the doctors might not be practicing, even though they've had guarantees from politicians that said they wouldn't be prosecuted if they performed an abortion, as the new 1864 law takes effect, goes back into effect, I should say.
Yeah, you found my attorney.
I was looking for my lawyer, and as it turns out, he was in the building today arguing over me getting the prime parking spot out here, which I appreciate he did that. So Barry Markson is one of the many lawyers that we have here at KTAR, and he's come in to explain this to us. I should also point out Barry has had stunning growth on X of late, and also is a blue checkmarked user.
I thought you were going to say stunning growth of my midsection, so I appreciate you not saying that, which is very nice.
No.
Yeah.
Hey, help me out here. Help us understand this.
All right.
So we know the 1864 law is in effect because the Supreme Court, and you explained to us why the Supreme Court, that was more of a legal decision as much as people wanted to make it political. It seemed pretty legal. Really sound. Yeah. So now that goes into effect, politicians are saying, don't worry, we won't prosecute. Okay. Do they have the authority to say that? What does that even mean when they say we won't prosecute? Does that mean there's no abortion law now in Arizona?
No, there's definitely an abortion law in Arizona, and that's in effect. So what happened is the Attorney General said, I'm not going to prosecute. She's going to use prosecutorial discretion. She's not going to prosecute people under this law, someone who helps a woman have an abortion. The governor issued an order 10 months ago, and same thing, consistent with that, and saying that all decisions about whether to prosecute would rest with the Attorney General. In essence, taking it out of the county prosecutor's hands. Several county prosecutors then, including here in Maricopa County in Rachel Mitchell, said, you can't do that. You don't have the authority to do that. So
Can she do that?
I don't know. It's going to be something a court's going to have to decide. I've never heard of it before. So whether or not a governor can say, here's an order that says county attorneys who are elected have their own duties under the law in Arizona, whether the governor is allowed to tell them what they can and can't do within the scope of their duties as county attorney. If you made me bet on it, I would bet that a court would say, no, the governor can't do that. So
the executive order and what the Attorney General did then would essentially have no weight. It'd be window dressing.
Two different things. So the Attorney General can say, she's a prosecutor, and she's allowed to say, I'm not going to prosecute people who assist a woman in an abortion in all cases. Like she could say somebody who assists a woman who's 9 months pregnant and shouldn't have had the abortion. I mean, maybe she has an exception to that.
Okay.
But every prosecutor can do that. The county prosecutor, anybody can do that. That's their decision. They decide where to put their resources, who to prosecute, when to prosecute. Whether the governor of a state can tell county prosecutors what they can or can't do, that I don't know, but I don't know that would be constitutional.
Talking with KTAR News legal expert Barry Markson, the other piece that I saw to this, Barry, regarding, we're talking about the 1864 law, abortion, this 2022 law, all these things, how they wrap all into one. Another thing that I saw online said that a new attorney general could also be elected in 2 years and decide to retroactively prosecute.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So it would depend on what the statute of limitations is.
Do you know what it is roughly?
I don't for that statute because, frankly, we've never used it here, so I don't know.
Right.
But let's assume it's 3 years or 6 years or something like that.
I mean, if it's 6 years, that's a long time to go back and prosecute over.
Yeah, absolutely. So if let's just say, for example, a Republican attorney general had come in and said, yeah, I'm absolutely going to prosecute these people. And the issue you have, and you're seeing it now down at the legislature, where, for example, yesterday you just had Heidi on talking about this, the Republican-led GOP House, the Republican House said, we're not going to repeal this. They blocked just even voting on whether to repeal the law. If you get a county prosecutor or an attorney general who's political and wants to appease that part of their base, they're going to go out looking for people to prosecute because their base wants that. They want people prosecuted for being involved in the abortion trade.
Barry, can you take me down to the nuts and bolts of this? Barry Markson is our legal analyst. So it's illegal, but the women are not to be prosecuted, right? This would only be for people who provide the abortions or people who assist. Does that mean the Uber driver?
It could. It absolutely could. It could be the friend. It could be the woman's best friend, or brother, or sister, or mother, or whoever who helps take her to the facility for the abortion.
So, if a mother decides I want to abort my child, and she goes to a clinic, and the friend takes her to the clinic, the mother has no liability, but the friend who drove the car could be held liable.
Correct. Under the original 1864 law, by the way, the mother did have criminal liability. She could be prosecuted.
Okay.
But the 2022 law that Arizona passed, even though it said the 1864 law comes back if Roe v. Wade is overturned, which is where we are now, also put in there, but no prosecution of the mother, no criminal exposure of the mother.
Let me walk down the lawyer field because I know how lawyers are sometimes. And I don't. Good looking? Yeah, very good looking. Yeah, I don't mean that in a negative way, but could I make the argument then that the gas station is liable for selling gas to the friend who filled the car up to take? I could not do that.
No, because that wouldn't really be a foreseeable outcome if you're selling gas. If that's the case.
Okay,
but it would be and this is we're stretching now. It would
listen,
be
I've seen them stretch the law all the time.
If they look, there's other states that are talking about prosecuting people who help a woman drive across state lines to get an abortion. So absolutely, there's a lot that can go on here. I don't expect that would be it. It would be somebody directly involved in helping.
All right. Barry Markson is our KTAR legal analyst. Barry, I have more questions. Joe has more questions. We have more questions for you, if you don't mind. You're on the clock, too. The Sixth Man Award goes to our own KTAR legal analyst, Barry Markson, who has come in to try to explain what some of the consequences are of the 1864 law going into effect that limits abortions in all cases, except in those of the mother's life being at risk. But Barry, who decides when mom's life is at risk? Is it the abortion provider? That would be the doctor? Because that seems like a tough defense to have to stand up in court and say.
Yeah, I mean, you would think it would be the doctor, right? I mean, if you're in with a doctor and you're having a problem and the doctor has to make a decision to terminate a pregnancy to save the life of the mother, that would be the person who makes that decision. The issue these doctors are going to have is criminally. It's a prosecutor that's going to make that decision. So what if the prosecutor in Mojave County wants to get some political stripes and a doctor in Mojave County did an abortion on a woman to save the life of the mother, and the prosecutor looks at it and says, I don't agree, and now is prosecuting that doctor under this 1864 law. So the risk is, are any doctors in Arizona going to do any abortions in Arizona? And I'm going to tell you the answer is no. And the evidence we have of that is in Texas, for example, they used to have 50,000 abortions a month. They passed the heartbeat bill, so you can only do an abortion after 6 weeks to save the life of the mother.
Right.
They now do 6 a year. 6.
Wow.
Not 6,000, 6.
6.
And the reason is because doctors aren't going to do it. Unless the woman is literally dying, bleeding out on the table in front of them, they're not going to do an abortion because how can they? They're not going to put their license and their life on the line.
Yeah, I can't imagine going home and saying, I saved a woman's life today, and now daddy has to go to jail for the next 2 to 5 years, which I also argue, since it's the 1864 law, they should have to go to the old Yuma territorial prison. What does it look like? Is it if you've got a prosecutor that says, we have to go after this person, whose jurisdiction, I guess, is the word that I'm looking for? You said Chris Mays isn't going to prosecute, but a county prosecutor still could. Does that mean the sheriff's department has to go arrest anybody involved?
Yeah, or the police department. I mean, so let's just, I'll use Phoenix as an example.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Rachel Mitchell's going to prosecute anybody, but let's just say that an abortion is done in a doctor's office, and the doctor says, I had to do it to save the life of the mother, and somebody in the office says, I disagree. I don't think you had to do it. And Rachel Mitchell or whoever the county prosecutor says, yeah, this guy broke the law. Send the police. They arrest the doctor. They bring him in and fingerprint him, and he's a felony criminal defendant.
And so the AG really wouldn't have anything to do with any of that at all.
Well, again, theoretically, no. I mean, the Attorney General saying, I'm going to do all of these in the state of Arizona. The governor said that. Whether or not that's constitutional, that's the question. We don't know that yet, but it's not certainly wouldn't keep, at this point, a prosecutor who wanted to make some political bones on the issue could go ahead and do it and make the state come out and say, no, you can't file lawsuits and say you can't do that.
We're talking with our legal expert, Barry Markson, about the future of abortion here in Arizona and what's going on right now with all of it. Barry, let's talk about multiple ballot measures. We know that there's a voter-backed one that's going to be on the ballot, which roughly spells out 24 weeks is about the term they're looking at there.
Yeah.
We heard from Heidi a few minutes ago, our reporter Heidi Hamel, who was down at the Capitol earlier this week. There could be one that's roughly 6 weeks, one that's roughly 14 or 15 weeks, that the Republicans are floating those two out there. What happens if multiple ballot measures, and this is Arizona, if multiple ballot measures pass here in Arizona. What's the law?
Yeah. So first of all, the first one you talked about is basically, if you read it, it literally codifies Roe v. Wade. It puts us right back where we were when Roe v. Wade was the law of the land in the United States.
Okay.
But it's a great question. So if we have multiple abortion ballot measures and they all pass, it'd be up to a court to determine how to either merge those together or which would be the law. They might put it back in the legislature. I don't know the answer to that.
Up to a court, meaning the Arizona Supreme Court?
Correct. It would go through the court system in Arizona first, but up to the eventually the Arizona Supreme Court. So that court might determine. The court may try to figure out that some of the parts of each of the initiatives are not in conflict, and therefore all could be law. Or the ones where there's a direct conflict, they'd have to figure that part out. So it'd be an absolute mess, and that's part of the reason I think the Republicans at the legislature are doing this. This is not a groundswell of support from the people. This is literally like 30 people up there who are saying, hey, let's do it. If one Republican in the legislature says, no, I'm not going to put this on the ballot, it doesn't go. So if that ends up on the ballot in Arizona, these alternative ones that are there to try to thwart the big one that's trying to codify Roe v. Wade, if those other ones end up on the ballot, it is literally because the Republicans in the legislature, every single one of them, are trying to ban abortion or severely restrict abortion rights in Arizona.
Can you take me back to Markson School of Law 101? Why not appeal the Arizona Supreme Court decision to the Federal Appeals Court?
Because it's a state court issue. It's very, very unlikely that the U.S. Supreme Court would even take this up on certiorari. They're not going to take it on review, most likely. It's an Arizona issue, an Arizona constitutional issue. So unless it was now when the Roe v. Wade decision was there, and it violated that, that's when you do that. But the U.S. Supreme Court they've gotten rid of it. So unless it's in violation of another abortion law that is nationally recognized by the courts, the Supreme Court won't take it.
Or there was some sort of interstate issue that would have to be settled on a federal level.
Right? But what the U.S.
Supreme
Court said in the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe v. Wade basically said send it back to the states. So each state gets to make this decision. So that's why you're not seeing appeals to the U.S. Supreme Court on initiatives that happened in Kansas and Ohio and the laws in Florida and Texas. Like these laws have all been passed since Roe v. Wade was overturned. You're not seeing those go up to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Barry Markson is a KTAR legal analyst. Barry, tell me about some of the members who are voting to not vote on the repeal. There is, I would say, a groundswell of rumors around that many of them are doing so because they're concerned about their political futures, and they're not necessarily concerned about their political futures within their own constituents, but rather they're concerned with donations, and specifically Kathy Herod, who seems to be a real force when it comes to getting reelected.
Yeah, so Kathy Herod she's run the Arizona Center, the Center for Arizona Policy for years and years and years, and she's controlled Republican politics in Arizona on these social issues forever. She has a lot of power at the legislature and usually with the governor, and she's come out and said, no, do not fight this. We want the total ban. We want the 1864 ban. They supported it when it was written like this in 2022 to make this happen. Yeah. And she's called out all of the Republican legislators and say, you better not change this. So far, every single one of them is following her except 3, and the 3 are literally the 3 that will lose their personal elections if they don't do something to get rid of the ban.
So maintaining power may be part of what's driving what we're seeing in the legislature right now. Barry Markson, our KTAR legal analyst. Love having you in here, pal. Thanks, you so much.
Thanks for watching The Chris and Joe Show. Click to see more from Chris and Joe, and tap the button in the middle to subscribe to KTAR News.